very much quiet and unknown. And the famous story is, and Shmuel corrected me with the details, I don't remember all the details, but there was a chassid of Tzemach Tzedek, his name was Reb Shmuel Ber Borisov, from a city, Borisov, whatever, Reb Shmuel Ber. And one day, the Tzemach Tzedek said a Maimer Chassidus. He brought a Zohar or a piece of Arizal, and it was a difficult passage, and he was a big Talmud Chochem, and he couldn't figure it out. So he went to the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek said, go ask my sons. He went to of course, the oldest, the second, the third, he went, and they couldn't tell him pshat. They didn't know the answer. And he's saying to himself, I'm gonna go also to Reb Shmuel. I mean, Reb Shmuel wasn't known to be involved in Zohar and Arizal. But he said that Tzemach Tzedek said, go to my sons. So he went to the house of the Mahrash. It was the middle of the night or so. It was late at night, whatever, at night. And he saw the light on, and he looked through the window without the Rebbe Mahrash seeing him, and he saw him open to the page of the Zohar of the Kisvei Arizal that he had his question there, and he was learning it. So he said, aha, he probably knows the pshat because he's learning it. So I'm going to ask him. He knocks on the door. The Rebbe Mahrash can't believe someone's coming 10, 11 at night. He's there. He comes in and says, come in, Reb Shmuel Ber. Reb Shmuel Ber was older, I think. Reb Shmuel Ber was Chassid Tzemach Tzedek. Reb Shmuel Ber, yeah, come in. It's like, parenthetically, when we lived in East Flatbush, which is a neighborhood next to Crown Heights, in the 60s, the neighborhood went black, when Afro-American, it was terrible what was going on. Anyway, so Jews, Yidden, were selling their houses at cost price or less. Mamish, for $20,000, you could buy a nice house. In 1968, 69, 70, everyone was running like mice. Anyway, the Rebbe fought against it. Our Rebbe, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, backed the Rebbe. The Satmar Rav in Williamsburg had the same issue with the Puerto Ricans, and he fought against it. But the Yidlach, Rebbe here, Rebbe there, we run. We run. Where are you running? Like Manis Friedman says, he thinks that you run to Utah, they won't kill you in Utah. They won't hate you in Utah. Well, or New Mexico. If they want to hate you and get you, they're going to get you. But we run. So we run. So this neighborhood was called East Flatbush. This is where I grew up from birth to 1970 or so. Anyway, so my father was asleep. My father worked very hard, 2 jobs, and he got up very early. And he went to sleep at a decent time to function the next day and get up early. A knock on the door. There's Rabbi, I think, Bucket, who was a local Lubavitch Rav, Rabbi Yossi Bucket's father. He comes to the door, I think, with Rabbi Ben-Zion Shem Tov. You heard of the Shem Tov family, the grandfather, a fiery chassid. And they say, may we come in? My father comes down in his pajamas. He was already in bed sleeping. But when you have these 2 illustrious chassidim coming to your door, he opens the door without any question, come in. He's in his pajamas, and he says, sit down at the table. He offers them a drink, whatever. They say, we heard you want to sell your house to a black person. Schwarze. He says, the Rebbe is against this, they say. The Rebbe says, no, we should not do these things. And we're asking you to abide. You're a Lubavitcher. You send your kids to Lubavitch Yeshiva. You learned in Lubavitch Yeshiva. It's not up to you to sell your house. If you're a chassid, you listen to the Rebbe. That happened in 69 or 68, 69. But I remember my father was telling me how, in the middle of the night, they woke him up. That's when they came, 11 at night. So I remind myself when I'm telling you the story with the Rebbe Mahrash, this Reb Shmuel Ber came to him, surprising him at 11 at night. So what did he do? He didn't want Reb Shmuel Ber to know that he's reviewing his father's mimer, and he knows the pshat, and he's learning that section. So he put a big Russian newspaper on the table, and he hid his sefer, so that Reb Shmuel Ber should think that he's a commoner. He's reading a newspaper. Reb Shmuel Ber said, Shalom Aleichem, Reb Shmuel, how are you? And ba. He says, you heard the Maimer on Shabbos? He says, yeah, oh. He says, maybe you could tell me pshat in this section. He says, me? What are you, crazy? Me? Go to my brothers. I'm a craftsman. I like to joke with people when they come to Lubavitch. I like to schmooze. So he says, listen, fella, listen, Reb Shmuel. Your father said that one of my sons will explain the pshat. I went to your brothers, they didn't know. And I saw you learning that exact section. So I know that you can explain it to me. And he said, if you don't tell me the pshat, I'm going to tell everyone about what happened. And the cat will be out of the bag. And everyone will know that you are the real McCoy. And this story that I'm just telling you now was one of the reasons, or maybe the reason, in addition to the Psak Din, to the ruling of Reb Shneur Zalman Fratkin, this is the reason why he became the Rebbe, because the word got out that this Reb Shmuel is such a quiet, unassuming person. You would never think that he's a shayach to be a Rebbe, a Lubavitch Rebbe. And when they heard an elder chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek, who had seniority and was known, they said, that's it. Now, for the sake of truth and history, it doesn't mean that the chassidim of the Kopister, the Moganovis, and the others jumped for joy and became his chassid. They did not. And in fact, I heard from chassidim that he had the smallest group of Lubavitch chassidim, the Mahrash. And for the way it seems to me, for 30 years or so, till his son, the Rashab, took his father's place in Lubavitch in 1893, where he sat on his chair because his older brother, Reb Zalman Aaron, moved to Vitebsk, so he didn't feel that he's violating Kibud Aveim, Kibud Ach, where you're supposed to give cover to your older brother. When he left town, that was the first time in 1893 that he sat on the chair, but that's a technical thing. What I see from this is that for like 33 years, there was a lull in Lubavitch, and I have many proofs to that. It was so, but nevertheless, our tradition from the Rashab, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe is that he is the fourth Rebbe, and have a lot or a little makes no difference. He said Chassidus, and he continued the tradition of Lubavitch. And his theme was Lechatchila Aribber. What does that mean? What's that all about? He would say, and I told you I think once, it's printed only actually in one letter of the previous Rebbe. And our Rebbe took this one line from a letter that's in his father-in-law's a letter, and he made of it the theme of all themes, how to behave and act as a Yid, as a Chassid. And when he writes to someone, he says, who writes about an issue, he says, you're writing and telling him you can't do it. You're having a difficulty. You've tried this, you've tried that. So he says, he said it in Yiddish, the world says, people say, you try going under, you try going the normal way, you try to go. And if you don't succeed, then you jump over. He says, that's what people say. And then he says, and I say, my approach is, lechatchila aribah. Lechatchila means to begin with, jump over. Don't waste your time with the trying approach. This is a difficult avodah, maybe a risky avodah, and very unconventional. And that's why, Shmuel, I think the Rebbe, every year the Rebbe, twice a year at least, on the yard side and the Yom HaLedus, when he fabrengt, about, just for the record, the the first year, 1950 to 51, the Rabbi Nissa Mindel, not Mangel, Mindel, the Rebbe's secretary, went over to a few Bacharim and asked them to go to the Rebbe. In those days, you would knock on the door. He was in his office, and if he wasn't busy, he would let you in. And he said, ask him to make a Farbrengen on the Rebbe Rashab's yahrzeit, Beis Nissen. They did that, and the Rebbe said, I'm not going to Farbrengen Beis Nissen, but come back to me in a month from now, Beis Year, and then I'll Farbrengen. So that's from 1950. So for some reason, the Rebbe had this affinity to Beis Year. Really. It's very interesting. Because Beis Year is Rebbe Mahrash. Beis Nissen is Rebbe Rashab, the previous Rebbe's father. But for some reason, unless Beis Nissen came out on a Shabbos, he didn't make a Farbrengen, our Rebbe. But Beis Year, every year, I don't know if every single year in the 1950s, but once he started to Farbrengen more often in the 1970s, every year. So Beis Year was a Farbrengen, and the yahrzeit Yud Gimel Tishrei, and every time he spoke about Lechatchila Rebbe, and other times during the year. So the Rebbe identified, and really, if you look at the Rebbe's life and what he did and who he was one piece of Lechatchila Rebbe. Really, he did things. It's today. I have a Zoom with these Litvische Bacharim. I have no idea who they are, but they told me they've been asking different people around the world who have interesting things to discuss to talk to them. So they asked if I could talk about Lubavitch and the yeshiva world. I said, fine. But and I'm thinking about what to say. So you think about the Rebbe's life, what he brought to the world, it's this Lechatchila Rebbe. It really is. To go and send someone to Wyoming with buffaloes or whatever, cattle, or mountain lions, and to go to send someone here, even Rebbe Kunin, he comes to LA in 1965. Okay, they were from Jews, but the story that when Rabbi Kunin brought in hippies with the torn pants and the long hair and the smell into the Hungarian shul in Fairfax or wherever, they went over to Rabbi Reichel and showed him. They said, "Get him out of here. I'm sorry. This is not Yiddishkeit. I mean, you come into a shul dressed like a mensch, you smell like a mensch." So it was a revolution. A revolution that's one revolution. And then in Torah, the Rebbe made a revolution with his approach to Rashi and in many other areas. Lechatchila Rebbe. And if you ask any Lubavitcher boy or girl who goes through the system of Lubavitch, and you ask him, what is Lubavitch, what's the approach? Lechatchila Rebbe. This attitude, nothing can stand in my way. Really, it's a chutzpah. It really is a chutzpah attitude. Normally you go A, B, C, D, E, F, in an organized way. Here you go all out, shatter convention, and just go for it. And again, I'm not saying you do meshugana things, because the Rebbe said in 1982, at a Farbrengen Yud Gimel Tishrei, and they say he was talking to Rabbi Kunin, who was $17 million in debt. The Rebbe said, the idea of Lechatchila Rebbe is, Oires the toyu, bekalim the tikim. The energy, the passionate energy that's infinite, that's tohu, but within the vessels, within the filters of tikkun. So, to do crazy things and hurt other people is not what the Rebbe meant, chas v'sholom. But he means the inner attitude of the heart and the approach should be that this needs to get done, and you do it. And every one of you knows stories and people who you've seen this, and hopefully we in our lives emulate this. And this was the motto, the Rebbe says, of the Rebbe Mahrash. And again, here too, you have to ask yourself, how did the Rebbe get to that conclusion? From one line in a letter? And the answer is no. The answer is because he always said, and his father-in-law said, that the Rebbe Mahrash did Baal Shemske Hanhogis. he did Baal Shem Tov-like behavior. In other words, and there's stories how he went over to someone in a train, he didn't know him, and he said to him, young man, Yayin Nesech is Metame Alev Moach, Yayin Nesech contaminates the mind and the heart, and the guy didn't know, and then later the story is that he became a Baal Tshuva, and he came to that Mahrash, he met him in a hotel, and he cried his heart out, and he became a Baal Tshuva. So in other words, it was so not the norm to go over to someone and give him this musar. Yes, Shmuel.
I think the story was the Rebbe Mahrash went to the hotel where this guy was. He had people carry him, Hasidim, on a chair into the casino. This guy was in the casino, and he came up to him, he approached him there.
Right. Right, thank you. Those are the correct details. Yeah. And it's like, so, what is it ever going into? It's like Rabbi Grossman, right, from Yerushalayim, Migdal Emek, going into, the Nachlat Shiva bars, when we started off, So anyway, the point is that today is really an electrified day. It's Beis. So everyone, today is a good day for tefillah, extra tzedakah, extra teira. It's a day that we could, really in ourselves make a achlata. If there's something difficult, to say, I'm doing it, and not to allow anyone, including your spouse, and including your kids, and including your rabbis, if you feel conviction, do it. Now, you don't do it like a horse and like an animal, you don't shepherd another person, but if it just involves you, then you do it. People might say, well, that's not the right way, not this, not that. If I'm not disturbing you and you can do what you want, I have a right to go l'chatchila riber. So Moshe Myers, I want you to go l'chatchila riber today. You hear what I'm saying? You go l'chatchila riber. You ask Hashem for everything, and you say, Hashem, give me the bracha. Guys, what time is it? I have no idea. Okay, listen. We didn't learn inside the Maimer, but I thought it's very important to go over the life and history of the Rebbe Mahrash, because there's not a lot known about him, and he was mamash a big tzaddik. L'chaim, everyone should have a great day. Zayt gesund. Yes, Hillel, you want to say something?
Thank you.
Hillel, you wanted to say something?
Your mic's off.
Okay. Sei gesund. Bye-bye.